Please show us a sign.
Is that a door open there, or am I looking at something?
A room of ghostly children and a famous beheading await the most haunted team as we travel to North Yorkshire.
What's the matter? Oh, whoa!
Hello, I'm Yvette Fielding, and this week I've brought my team to a beautiful country house. Apparently it has a grisly history but is full of ghosts. Welcome to Most Haunted and to Kipling Hall.
Constructed in the 1620s by George Calvert, Secretary of State to King James I, Kipling Hall was originally built as a hunting lodge. Over the centuries, 4 families have made Kipling Hall their own, with generations of not only landowners but also workers' and servants' lives revolving around this great hall. It's no surprise that Kipling is said to be rife with unexplained paranormal phenomena.
Built in the 1820s as a Gothic drawing room, this library is often prone to unexplained cold spots as well as loud banging sounds. The ghost of a vicar has been seen lurking in an alcove that houses Lord Nelson's very own chair. The phantom of a little girl, thought to be very upset, appears to unsuspecting guests, but the most prolific spectre is that of a doctor who stands over by the piano.
Eternally, there is little evidence remaining of the Calvert family's presence here, as over the years each new owner would extend and renovate the hall to their own tastes and needs.
The 18th century service wing was joined to the North Tower by this tunnel, which was opened up between fireplaces for servants to come through, and arguably is the most haunted place in the hall. A female figure walks this place with stark regularity. She's so common that many visitors think that she's part of the attraction. Ghostly footsteps are heard walking this hard floor in the dead of night when no one is down here, and dark shadows are said to confront people when they dare enter this rather eerie place.
In 1722, the hall passed through marriage to the Crowe family, who built the estate up to a substantial 4,500 acres. Taking over from the Crowes, again through marriage, was the Carpenter family. And it is to this family that one of Kipling's most famous ghosts is said to be related.
This is the drawing room, and many people have witnessed a very unhappy lady sitting by the window. This apparition is thought to be related to Elizabeth Mackenzie, mother of the 4th Earl of Tyrconnell. It is said the woman is waiting for her son to return. He died in Vilna in 1812, having volunteered to serve with the Russian forces, pursuing the retreating French army. Her sobs are heard echoing through the hall.
What more can historian Leslie Smith tell us about this great hall and what stood here before it?
This building is a classic Jacobean red brick house. The history of the land, however, that it's built on shouldn't be forgotten, because that too has had its dramas, although essentially a farmland attached to an abbey that was affected in the dissolution of the monasteries by Henry VIII. The property is really rooted in a man called George Calvert. His father was born nearby. George himself went to Oxford, where he studied at Trinity in law. After that, he went into government for the Crown and ended up as the Principal Secretary of State for King James I himself. He worked hard for James, had a tremendous reputation amongst ambassadors, a man whose good wife worked just as hard, producing 11 children, the last of which, I'm afraid, cost her life. There is the story of a baby dying here at this house, and another of a member of the family of a child dying, but away from it. But maybe the memory clung of the distress of that child dying elsewhere. We have figures on the stairs darting about, we have crying out, and a horrible face is said to be seen coming straight into the face of visitors, and they've no idea where it's come from, and then it's gone. So here at Kipling Hall, there is history of people and the building, great change, great passion, and some very good ghost stories indeed.
Kipling's rich history and the artefacts housed within the hall relating to that history make tonight's investigation all the more intriguing. Something I'm keen to discuss with parapsychologist Dr. Kieran O'Keefe.
Kipling Hall is a beautiful place, and I find it incredibly interesting because there's lots of objects, lots of wonderful photographs from the Victorian era, and there's a couple of ghost stories featuring an object here in the house, so it's going to be a good night.
Given the number of objects around and given the history associated with these objects, perhaps we're dealing with what a lot of mediums call this residual idea, that maybe there's something left over in a spiritual sense centred around some of these objects.
There's one object here I can't actually believe that it is here, and it's just sat on a shelf. It's Charles I's execution block, and I wondered whether we could actually ask Chris to place his hands on there and see if he gets anything without telling him, and also Nelson's chair, because apparently a figure has been seen by Nelson's chair. Cover up the fact that it is Nelson's chair and see if he can guess who it is.
I think it's a great idea, and also it's great the way the objects have been placed, because they're not a central feature as you walk into a room, as you'd expect those objects to be. You'd expect kind of a big exhibition built around them, but they are just objects displayed on the side, nothing grand. So I think it's a good idea to do some psychometry testing.
And what are you, as a parapsychologist, looking for this evening, and what part of the investigation are you looking forward to most?
I'm actually looking forward to the long gallery the most. It's quite an impressive area. It is quite open, so it's not scary in any way, but there have been a couple of very interesting accounts there from people with very different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds. But also off there's another room where there's been some poltergeist activity. So we're dealing with an area where there's an apparition, but also in there people hear the noise of a poltergeist in another room. So it's an ideal place, from my perspective, to conduct a vigil in the gallery, but then split off a couple of people should any noises be heard.
The Long Gallery is certainly an area we will investigate later. But first, we're joined by medium Chris Conway in the library for our lit walk around.